thank you so much for coming on the new Unfiltered today.
Thank you for having me.
You are also an upcoming speaker at this 2024 Be Fearless Summit. But
yes.
I saw you speak on a panel at an event in Soho House a few months ago, I think now.
Yeah.
And there was, I think, 4 people on the panel, and I just was like, I only wanted to see you.
Well, thanks.
They were cool.
Thanks, because there was like a whole line. I put that panel together. I had been trying to do it for several months, but the strikes made everything really, really difficult about what people felt comfortable, what they could talk about, what they couldn't talk about. But it kind of worked itself out because I think the panel was a really good mix of people from my past life, my present life, maybe my future life. But there was like a list of agents and managers like handing out cards to all the panelists except for me. But then I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then you and I chatted, and I was so excited to talk to you. And I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I beelined for you because not only were you so impressive with your moderating skills,
you.
But you're also a podcaster.
Yes.
You also work very high up at Conde Nast, which you have for 3 years.
Yes.
You just told me how you got paid to move out of your apartment.
Right here.
Lot of money.
Right here. One of the most epic apartments I've ever had, which was crazy because I negotiated. I used to bartend when I first moved to Los Angeles. I got laid off from my advertising copywriting job, like whatever, when I first got here. And I was bartending at this like really like up and coming restaurant down the street, but I used to live further down towards Melrose. Couldn't afford a car, so I would walk all the way, which in retrospect is wild. It's also why I was 10 pounds thinner, and I was like 10 years younger. But I would walk all the way, and I was walking, and I saw an old little man putting in a for rent sign right here we're right by Chateau Marmont, right by Sunset. And I was currently living with this like crazy girl who had been kicked off of American Idol. It's like such an LA story.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was like nuts, like just a total weirdo, like trying to make it in country music, but like in AA, so there'd be like the weird dudes in the apartment. Very classic Los Angeles story. Kept walking, had all this money in my pocket, and I was on my way to the bank because I had all my tips, and I saw this little old man like putting in a for rent sign. I walked up to him. I'm like, how much do you want for this apartment? He's like, $1,400 a month. I was like, what if I gave you 4 months rent in cash right now? Would you make it $1,100?
Oh, wow.
And he said, yes. West Hollywood is rent controlled. I lived there for 7 years. The building got bought out. I was rent controlled. I paid nothing. That in and itself is a very long story, but I researched like what payouts, like how people calculated payouts, because I think people have this grandiose idea or this dream that like my building's going to get bought and I'm going to get $100,000, but that's not actually true. It's actually very formulaic. I did a bunch of research and I got paid to leave.
Wow. Okay. My next question for you is, who is Liz Culley? And I hate when people are like, who's Alexa Curtis? But now you're like a badass.
I'm hustling out here. Who is Liz Culley?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know how to answer that. It's funny that you ask me that because in selling, I've gone through selling quite a bit of shows and packaging those up and podcasts, and they always ask you that, like, who are you? Or, like, what's your log line or whatever if you're an actor. And so actually the first episode of my current podcast, I asked a ton of people in my life to just answer that question for me. And it was very funny what people said. A lot of people said hustler, business person, personality. Other people, sister. I had family do it. And I guess how I would answer that is, I don't know. I'm just, somebody that's had to work really, really hard. I like working hard. I complain about it, but I keep doing it. And I don't know. I'm a regular person who obviously likes to have attention because I can't stop making podcasts.
I don't know how you define the word regular, but I would say it's probably not you.
Yes, regular.
That's cool. You grew up in the Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so SF. And where'd you go to school?
Like as a kid or college or what?
Yeah.
I went to the New School in New York.
Oh yeah.
My dad. It was the only school I wanted to go to. I got early. They have these really interesting. So it's like 5 schools within the New School. Parsons, the New School, Mannes College of Music, the Jazz Contemporary School, And I wanted to do a double major in photography and writing, but then I wanted to do a tertiary in jazz.
I have no idea what the fuck that is.
Three tertiary. Like, I wanted to do 3 majors.
Okay.
So I knew that that's where I wanted to go. So I got in on, like, a photo writing, and I went there and I, like, had a little bit of a scholarship. And then my dad ended up actually getting sick. So I took medical leave, like a deferred semester, and then they took my fucking... Oh, can I curse all the time?
Yeah, you can.
Sorry.
I like
I was
to
like,
curse way too much.
boy,
No,
I'm
you're
cursing
good.
all the time.
For it.
I lost my scholarship. And I was like, how much is this gonna cost? And then I didn't get into the jazz school because I, like, completely just bombed my audition. And so I left. But I went for a year and a half, and it was great, and I made a lot of friends that I'm still friends with. And then I went back to San Francisco, and I went on this really interesting journey where I went to, like, City College of San Francisco, like, going to at night because I had to work all during the day. And it would be, like, me and, like, you know, nurses or people that, you know, were trying to get back into school or whatever. And then I went to San Francisco State University and graduated there. But it was very, like, my journey of school, I've been to every kind of school. Private, public, city.
Did you grow up with money?
I did. But my parents lost it all. It's a whole nother...
You didn't call up however they lost
like
it the way you did with your apartment.
It's like
you
a
guys owe me
fucking
money.
podcast. No, yeah, you know, my dad is from New Zealand. He worked really, really hard. He had a very successful structural design firm. He did amazing projects like Ghirardelli Square in San Francisco, Pac Bell, which I think is called Oracle.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. My mom was very successful in her own right, rolled bootstraps, and then they, like, made a bad business deal and, like, lost all their money. But it's, you know, whatever. So I've seen all sides.
Yeah, at what age?
Like 18, like when I went off to college.
Yeah. No, that's a hard time, yeah, because then, you know, you have to pay for college. Which I didn't go to college because I couldn't pay for it. However, I applied to everywhere, and I toured the new school with my mom. That is actually the one that I didn't. I applied to, like, LIM, Marymount, NYU. I got denied from everywhere. I can't remember why I didn't end up applying fully to the new school, or maybe I did and also got rejected. But I remember that tour out of all of them. I love that building. Yeah. In Chelsea.
Totally.
It's so nice.
Yeah, it's a very impressive school. And back then, like, nobody really knew about it. But then, you know, for me, when I figured out how much it was going to cost, I was like, dude, this doesn't make any fucking sense to go into debt like this. And I actually am so happy that I left. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what my life would look like. I bet I would still live in New York. Like, I don't know. But it was a grind. I mean, I had to still work. So I was, like, working in nightclubs and going at, like, 19 and going to school the next morning. Like, it was a lot. Yeah. And, you know, there are moments when I really regret leaving, but I don't have, like, I literally didn't have student debt. Mm-hmm.
Which is impressive.
Well, yeah, it's really impressive. I mean, my wife did, and we had to, like, pay for that, and that was a lot. It's a nightmare. And then also between medical, I don't have any medical debt either, but between medical debt and school debt, it's very difficult for people to grow wealth of any kind.
Especially now. Yes. Especially in LA. And you honestly don't strike me as an LA person. Like, you're way too kind.
Really?
And, like, grounded. You don't have that edge. That, like, I was just sitting at Soho House because I couldn't figure out anywhere to work. I'm not even kidding, I was typing, and this girl, just tiny little teeny bopper girl, she looks up at me verbatim. Can you please not type so hard? You're making the table shake. We're at a massive community table because you can't even sit anywhere. I literally just looked at her and said, I literally wrote 2 sentences. Like, that to me, something about that is so LA. Like, people in New York at least would just be, I don't know, they would be like...
I would have looked at her and been like, get fucked. I mean, I don't know if that's me being a nice person or not. I would have been like, get fucked and go somewhere else. Yeah, you know, like, get out of here. No, people always think I'm from New York.
Well, that's why, because you've got a very, like, straight edge,
direct,
not fake. But, you know, a lot of people who listen to this podcast are either aspiring entrepreneurs or they want to have a job that's like the Conde Nast kind of job, or they want to do your other job, which is like full-time podcaster. Oh, so, you know, this journey for you, what advice do you have for that person who perhaps is mid-college, can't figure out what they want to do, but they know they eventually want to be where you are now?
Sure. Oh my God.
And at a company like Conde Nast, I mean, that's an incredibly what's the word? I mean, that's a hard company to work and get in with, right? It's edgy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, things are so different now. The way that, I was actually listening to NPR, was it over the weekend? I don't know, my days blur. Well, if you want to be like me, you don't know what day it is ever. I think it was on Saturday. I was listening to NPR, and they were saying that, they were breaking down, quote, the creator economy, which is something that I worked in really early. I worked, in the YouTube space real early days, which was wild to see the trajectory of how big it's gotten, but also to see the dip as well, which I think a lot of us who worked in that industry sort of saw that. But now they were talking about now you have, young people that aspire to be content creators. However, the government doesn't even have like a ton of information about how to quantify that. There's no regulations. Like it's an interesting conversation to be having, 10 years or whatever since I started working in that industry. Thank God I don't work in it anymore.
Why? Don't lose your train of thought, but that's a whole other conversation.
Dude, the war stories. I sold like Logan Paul's first deals. I sold, what's her name? All of them. It was so annoying. It was the wild, wild west. They were getting paid so much money. I was working with really traditional brands, trying to get deliverables. Someone would inevitably fuck it up. Mm-hmm. They were children. You're like dealing with their parents. And that's kind of what I'm dovetailing into, where you ask like where people want to work in content creation and what have you. It's like kids these days actually see that as a profession. It is so unstable. It is.
Thank God you're saying this.
Oh, okay.
Thank God.
Like
someone.
The boomer mom coming on here. No, but it's like so unstable. I've had so many people in my lifetime be like, Liz, you should do this full time. And it's like, I don't have money to fall back on. I don't have like endless amounts of cash, like just to create content. I see it as something that I absolutely love to do. I've made it into a business. It was a side hustle that was a passion that I absolutely have figured out how to monetize and also advise other people on how to do so as well. But it is incredibly predicated on the fucking internet, which is bullshit. I am shadow banned, as I'm like sitting here cursing. I am shadow banned all the time because I talk about politics and gay shit. All the time. All the time. I only have like 12,000 followers. It doesn't make any lick of sense. Yeah. If you look at my analytics, which I have done for other people and I've looked at my own, none of it makes sense. The reach like goes up millions and then down to 3 people. Like none of it makes any sense. So I can't imagine having my whole life be dependent on somebody else's algorithm. I look at these young people and I'm like, what if TikTok goes away? Yeah. Which it could. Yeah. I used to work with ByteDance. I had a very popular show with their former platform called Live.me. Were you ever familiar with that?
Was it the Vine days or post-Vine?
No. It wasn't even that long. I mean, I guess like 6 years ago. So ByteDance, which is the parent company of what we now know as TikTok, formerly Musical.ly.
I know Musical.ly.
Yeah. So ByteDance also had a platform called Live.me, where it was a live streaming platform. You're actually now seeing a lot of I don't know what they call it on TikTok. I'm not really on TikTok, if I'm being honest with you, because it's just like, bleh. But where people are like pointing at things and you give them money in app.
Oh God.
I don't know.
OnlyFans?
No, but like love. I actually like love OnlyFans. I'm not on OnlyFans, but I have there's a lot of interesting
I wish I was on
things.
OnlyFans.
Get on OnlyFans.
I think about it. I just saw those 2 teachers who were like, we make more money on OnlyFans. They were fired from their job. I don't mean to laugh, but they're making fucking 10, 15 grand a month.
Why wouldn't you?
I know.
I mean, yeah. I mean, a very good friend of mine named Michelle, who was just on my podcast, started an app called Sunroom, which is kind of a chic OnlyFans. She was, employee number 17 at Bumble. It's initiated by women and non-binary folks, and it's like a little bit less raunchy than Sunroom. People make thousands of dollars. Yeah, you should. I'll introduce you to her. You should have her on your show. Yeah. She's great. She's real smart. But advice about that sort of part of my life is I actually wouldn't really advise people to become content creators full time.
Yeah.
I think that's wildly risky. I think, you really have no control. I think the narrative is like, you make the rules and like you make content and like I don't have my phone, but like your phone is like it's direct live, like all this crap. What if TikTok ends? I was on live.me. I had a show. I know what it's like. I worked for the platform. I had 2 million followers on that platform in like a month or two.
Something went
because
viral,
they pushed me through the algorithm.
And then what happens?
They shut that business down. I used to they were flying me all over. I did VidCon, I'm hosting shit. And then they decided as a company that they weren't going to move forward with Live.me. Creators, Logan Paul, Lily Singh, who I also worked with a ton, we were all paid a grip to be on Live.me. It was all over Los Angeles, billboards everywhere. Everyone had a show. So I had a show called Mic'd Up, and I would go live. It's basically my podcast now. I would just go hang out with cool people that I knew, and I would talk to them live. And you could get, quote, tips, like OnlyFans Live. I made a grip of money.
Like how much in one show? What would you make?
Like a couple $1,000
for what, an hour?
Yeah,
doing something you just love, like you're doing
just
for
this.
Free anyway. Sorry, I can't pay you a few grand.
No, and I wouldn't expect you to. You know what I mean? Because like that's crazy.
Yeah.
But it went away.
And you never were able to like convert those followers to. Okay.
No, because I don't know. I just didn't. I wasn't able to convert them, and I don't know how real they were. I don't know. I mean, I knew I had some fans. It's kind of a creepy app. I also didn't like that. The VidCon of it all. I would meet people in person, and it would freak me out, and I'd be like, taking pictures, and I'm like, oh my god, it's so fucking weird. But I saw very intimately how when you're helping the algorithm of a particular platform with advertising, and they push you through it, how far and fast you can get. And it's just like that's not going to happen for the average person. Celebrities, when they join, like Jennifer Aniston, perfect example. She had never been on Instagram before until last year when she actually did. Speaking of, Conde Nast, Allure's last ever print issue. She, in a day, had like millions of followers. I don't know. I don't know if I like really. I definitely think over time she would get to that. But thinking about her core demographic, probably
Instagram.
They are, but like that quick? I don't know, dude. I just don't know.
So how did Conde Nast come into the picture? Because you did the content creation, and I have to say, I so appreciate this because I say this all the time. Like, this Alex Earl, this Mr. Beast, who I still can't figure out anything about this guy. And it seems like these people are, I can't attest to like anyone under the age of 16 who's amassed 1 million followers. I can't tell you that you're super smart because you're still figuring that out, right?
Sure.
But this guy seems to have really figured out the YouTube algorithm. He talks about how long it took him at the beginning whenever I see his things in CVS. But again, I would never look at him as like a Jennifer Aniston, right? My mom would have no idea, but this guy's probably making more than Jennifer Aniston at this rate,
probably.
Which is bizarre. So I think that, having that sense of content creation, that any of this could go away at any time, is so important for people in their 20s to hear. But what was your interview like at Conde Nast? I mean, how did you even apply to that?
I didn't apply. I was recruited. So before Condé, I had worked at Bustle Digital Group.
I love Bustle.
Yeah. So I, was an early employee there. Before that, I had, worked at Pop Sugar, MySpace. I mean, I've worked really hard for 15 years. So, it was very kind, but I was recruited to come into a role that had been opened. But it was a rigorous, and I will also say I had an insane social media background check. Luckily, I'm not a racist. Mm-hmm. I did go on a Twitter rant about R. Kelly, but I stand by that. I stand by telling R. Kelly that he's a piece of shit. But I didn't have too much to worry about, but I am obviously quite public on, and at that time I had a podcast that was being produced by Embassy Row, which is the production company that does Watch What Happens Live and, a lot of other Bravo stuff. And my good friend was on Bravo. There was just a lot, and I was like, oh shit, I can't, I've worked really hard at this part of my life, this passion project that I've made into a business that I'm not willing to give up. A lot of times when you work, especially at publishers, which I've done throughout my career, there is a church and state in terms of your ideas. It's quite frankly why I moved out of the editorial space that I started my career and went more into the business side, because I really wanted to keep my ideas for myself. And learned that, not necessarily the hard way, but I was lucky, but I learned it. And so they had come to me, but I was very clear that, like, I wasn't going to stop making the podcast or doing appearances. I just am very aware of how separate those parts of my life are. I, like, keep them very separate.
And they're okay with that, because I remember when I had this show on Radio Disney, and they did not want me doing anything, and I still did, and I don't think they liked me too much.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful they gave me that opportunity just from one email that I wrote. So everyone write those goddamn cold calling emails, because you never know what's going to come of it. But they did not like that. I don't think that company wanted other talent doing the, like, I mean, I look at you a lot as someone who I would like to grow into, and a lot of what you've said seems like very similar to my story, minus the parents losing the money or having any money. I wish though one day. But yeah, so I'm curious about that. You know, how were you so confident to be able to be like, I'm going to keep these separate, but this is still my existing brand?
I don't know. I'm old. I've not been confident a lot. I've stopped at certain times and, like, didn't make content for a long time. I, shelved things. And then at the end of the day, it's like, it is who I am, you know? I mean, I definitely approach my work, especially because I work in entertainment, in a different way. Like, I've also worked my fucking ass off for 15 years and, like, went to City College at the end and, like, went to state. Like, I had a lot to prove. I bartended till I was 27 years old, while a lot of other people I knew were already working at CA or whatever they were doing in the mailroom. Like, I was fucking nannying and doing crazy shit. Like, it's who I am. I have a lot of contacts on both sides. It helps me, I think, having had so many different types of jobs, not being ashamed or having ego about having different levels of jobs. Like, I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? I roll up my sleeves. I'm really hard on young people in the office because they're like, that's not my job. I'm like, guess what, dude? You don't even know what it was like 15 years ago. Like, I was allegedly, like, as an intern, making reservations at, like, strip clubs for my boss. Like, we used to do the most fucked shit. And I think, you know what I mean? Like, full stop. And I'm like, dude, like, you have it so good. Like, when I didn't have health insurance until I was almost 30. You know? So, well, on and off. That I shouldn't say it because I had jobs. But then when I would lose them or whatever. I also watched, like, you know, a lot of people get laid off. I was coming out of college in 2008 when you would, like, be going up for a job against somebody who was, like, a VP. It was crazy. So I think the great thing that I'm really grateful about Condé is I think that they know, they, like, hired me at my age and at my level for me. And they knew that about me. I'm also not a dumbass. I'm not disparaging my clients or my company ever because I'm very grateful for my job. I never want to lose my job. And I wouldn't do that. I mean, I will unfortunately say, speaking of Jennifer Aniston, and I love Apple dearly as my clients. I also worked at the Apple store, if you can believe it. Another fucking job. Oh my God, I have, like, t-shirts with me with, like, the lanyard and the blue shirts.
You're
it's
too cute.
Hilarious. The morning show is, like, the worst show.
I watched, like, maybe first 5 episodes and I really liked it, but I usually only like crime. But I liked the morning show. I don't know.
It has gone off the deep end hinges. Maybe you'd like it because it's as weird as a true crime as that. So.
I just liked the first 5 episodes, but I want to stick on what you said about being hard on young people. Okay. I try to focus on this. I mean, I'm 26, but everyone I interview, I really like to be over the age of 30 because the perspective is very much... and I don't even know if you are over the age of 30, but I'm going to assume
you're a kind person.
What?
You know yes, I'm
I don't know how
over
old
the
you are,
age of 30.
But I will say based on experience, over 30. And you know, there was one actually interview I did with a VC woman, Leslie, and she was amazing. But she said, you know, I said, what do you look for when hiring or what turns you off?
Sure.
And she said, I'm sick of these young people under the age of 26 usually coming to the table and thinking that, you know, they know it or that they have the answers. And she was like, there's a difference between someone wanting to get a job and, you know, being ambitious, but also thinking they should not have to do the bullshit thing or the calling of the strip clubs or whatever that would be.
No one should call a strip club.
But I agree, your boss, right? You guys like getting the coffee and doing that. So how do you...
I was grateful. It was a fucking sick job. I was the first hip-hop intern at Capitol Records. I was 19 years old. I was living in New York. I could not afford that internship, but I, figured it out. I was so happy to be there. When I ended up working at MySpace, which I got that job, which is so crazy, bartending at said place up the street, some people came in, we ended up talking, they're like, oh, what do you, is this your full-time gig? What's your deal? I'm like, I was doing some copywriting at an advertising agency, I got let go. They're like, let me see your, send us your resume. Went in, knew a guy because I had freelanced at Vice doing whatever, got the job, had that job. I was the first person there, last person to leave. I didn't give a shit what job they gave me. It was the most amazing job I've ever had in my life. For 3 years, I got to work with every single famous musician that has ever existed because everybody at that time had gotten discovered on MySpace. I created 4 shows. I hosted the X Games. I hosted the Santa Monica Twilight Concert Series. I was on TV. I mean, I was able to be openly queer. No one gave a shit. I mean, it was wild. It was the best. I was the last person laid off.
Oh, wow. That's
the
good.
last person laid off.
Good.
But I can tell you why.
Yeah.
Because I started in content. I learned sales. I learned production. There were times where work sucked. We went through 4 rounds of layoffs. Watching your friends get laid off was awful. I was still pretty young. I was 27, 28, learning the ropes. I introduced myself. I was kind and courteous to upper management. And the guy who had been head of sales, who through a series of layoffs and mergers and acquisitions became the CEO, and he fucking took care of me. And I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm still cool with that homie. And he now runs some VC firm in Newport and does whatever. And I talk to him on LinkedIn. But I was kind, courteous. I showed up to work on time. And when I was hungover, guess what I didn't do? I didn't call out. I went and puked in the fucking bathroom like a goddamn adult. And I came in and figured my shit out. I also met all the IT people. I was the first person to ever interview Priyanka Chopra, who's Jonas now. And she had never been to America before, and we did this interview. And we had an editorial series called Free Lunch. I also had SZA's first ever interview in that series. And Priyanka and I went to this little cafe. We got tuna melt.
So she was famous then, or no?
No one knew her in America. She was she had already been, I think, Miss India at that point. I mean, Priyanka Chopra was quite well known in India, but no, she had never done anything in America. It was first time in America, on a press tour. And I didn't know who she was. I was okay, whatever. Did the interview, come back, and she's like, yeah, can I use the restroom in the office? I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And all of a sudden, in our internal system, it's all these tech dudes, because here's my sound advice. Always be cool with finance, be cool with legal, and be cool with the IT teams.
Why were they, what were they doing?
Well, they were like, hey, are you doing an interview? And I'm getting all these slacks from these guys, or it wasn't Slack, but it was our internal system. And I was like, yeah, guys, I was like, why are all these people messaging me? I was like, oh, I'm just finishing up an interview. I was like, is my computer exploding? They were all from India. Oh. So they were losing their fucking minds that I was with Priyanka Chopra. And I was go up to Priyanka Chopra. I was like, is it cool if my entire IT... She sat there for an hour, met every single person. But I ended up running into that guy at 2 jobs later. It's just being kind, being courteous, doing the work, rolling up your sleeves, meeting people, cross-functionality within your company is super important. And I think a lot of young people I don't know. I know that it's not a blanket statement. I know there's really hard-working people, you're 26, just like you, that are entrepreneurial and doing the thing. But I worry that, to go back to asking me about content creation, if we have this skewed mentality that you can put something on the internet and be viral and rich and famous and live in a fucking TikTok house, and you don't have to do all the hard work that leads up to that. Because let's say hypothetically that does happen to you. I hope to goddamn you have really good adults around you who know how to fuck around with your finances.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, who's going to do that for you? What, are you going to have some like rando doing it? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You're fucked. And then what happens if you're an idiot and you say something on the internet and you get canceled? How are you going to get another job?
Yeah.
It's just like, it's a risky thing.
I know. I was thinking, I've just like left Austin for good because I was getting sick of living.
Oh, you
there.
are?
So
You did. I was asking you about that when we talked. Okay.
No, now I just moved out of my place after 4 years, so I'm glad to be out of there. But I always think Juliana Rancic moved to Austin.
From Chicago? Wasn't she like a Chicago girl?
Chicago girl, married to Bill Rancic, then they moved
right.
there from here. But, she was canceled. I mean, her career was totally over with the thing that happened when
Zendaya.
Yeah, on E! And obviously that cancel culture is a beast of its own. And I think though people forget, and that was so long ago, people probably don't even know who Juliana Rancic is, right?
I bet, yeah. I mean, I do.
Yeah.
But I also used to audition at E! I mean,
I used to watch it.
Yeah, it's like Juliana Rancic. I mean, she's around for a really long time. But yeah, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, but that ended her career, right?
Yeah.
And I think this group of young people, unfortunately, there's a sense of entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're able to see people who didn't work their ass off like you and I did. And they see this viral or this fame on the internet and they just think you can kind of be a piece of shit and get away with it and then nothing will happen. And I just think that's the day and age that we're growing up in. So I think that people who work and have jobs, especially in entertainment, really should take it upon themselves to educate this younger demographic, especially those who want to work in entertainment, that that's just not the reality. Being a content creator is not a lucrative career.
No, I don't think it is anymore. I think, listen, I go back to the platform. How scary is it that you're legit putting in a platform that, quite frankly, you can't even get a hold of?
Yeah, you can't.
Like, what if you're, my subscription, it's actually interesting. They just released all the subscription numbers. Apparently there's 10 million people on the platform that subscribe to somebody. You can have subscription.
Oh, yeah.
It's like nothing. That's nothing.
I clicked when it said, do you want to subscribe or whatever. Now, I don't even have a subscription. No one's ever subscribed to mine. I never promote it, but it still says you can subscribe. And I can't even find a button to say, I don't want people to subscribe to me. Subscribe to my newsletter, but not
exactly.
my Instagram.
Well, and I'm constantly told I can't monetize content, and it's literally me cooking. Yeah. Why? Why can't I?
Why do you think?
Because it's all loop. There's so many. It's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's not perfect. I think people, who knows? Maybe I have a troll on there who's warning or whatever. Yeah. This is scary content. I'm sure I do. But that is a very scary thing for me to think about. I mean, listen, if I could go back in time, I'd be like a dentist. Mm-hmm. I would be a doctor. I would be I wouldn't have smoked weed every day of my life in high school, and I would have gone into something else. I mean, I'm a pretty artistic person, and it all worked itself out. But, I don't know. I would have gone into accounting. Be an accountant. I pay my accountant so much money. Yeah. I just paid my accountant $150 to change my LLC into an S corp, and then I got to pay her $365 next week because I need to have her explain to me how to move something wherever. That's what you should do. Yeah. And that's a real problem is whatever. It's just I really think that it's totally fine to create content. I wish my content did better. I really did. I wish that I don't even get considered for so many brand deals because of my Instagram number.
Me too.
That's psychotic.
Yeah.
Because it should be about quality of engagement. Half the people that follow me are really big celebrities.
Yeah.
You don't want that? I'm dude, I don't know. I could have bought followers, but I didn't. But I have people that are winning Oscars and Grammy. I don't know. Isn't that cool? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But I think it's just such a risky thing as a young person to put all of your eggs into a platform basket. That's
terrible idea.
A terrible idea.
Yeah. Two things I'd like to briefly unpack in that what you said. And I think a lot of people listening would say, like, okay, Liz, like, you pay your accountant a fuck ton of money. I've paid lawyers to write. It's like $12 a millisecond I heard my lawyer was charging. Aside from that, someone will say, well, I don't want to sit behind a goddamn desk, Liz. That sounds awful. I want to do what you do. So
I sit behind a desk all day long. I also wake up at like the fucking ass crack of dawn because I have to work New York and LA hours. But
you're not an accountant and you're not a dentist. And some people may be like, that's just the worst job. Like, I don't want to do that. They want to.
Why? I hear what you're saying, but like I have friends that are accountants and like lawyer. Actually, every lawyer I've ever met is like, do not become a lawyer. Yeah. So I don't know about that. But those are the people who have vacation homes. Mm-hmm. They're the people that clock out.
But maybe to some people, to most people now, I think they just think it's so cool because it's so Hollywood.
You know what wasn't cool and what wasn't great about Hollywood is the fucking strikes we just went through. I didn't make any fucking money. Yeah. Nobody made any money. Everyone stopped. Now the whole business is completely changed forever. It's also not, it's what, 2.5 years they're going to renegotiate again? I just had a woman that I work with ask me to like meet her best friend's daughter. Just graduated from college, super smart, went to University of Michigan. I was like, great, did you ever see Madonna's daughter? You're too young, okay, who cares? She and I were talking, she's like, I desperately want to get entertainment. I was like, babe, why? Did you not just see what we went through? Why?
I don't think people, though, are thinking at that next steps. Right?
That sucked.
Yeah. But you kept your job at Conde Nast, so you still got paid. But you didn't get paid for the creative stuff that you do.
Well, it's a little bit more complicated. So, yes, did I get my salary? Of course, yes. And I worked really, really hard. But from a budget's perspective, if film and TV aren't marketing films, then I'm not able to successfully do my job because I'm to use those budgets and allocate them towards advertising, whether that's print, event, social, etc. So, like, I don't know if young people really understand how, first of all, the strikes cost the state of California a projected $7 billion.
That's insane. The state is wild.
Well, let's think about it. Makeup artists, I'll start from like what people, from like a superficial where people can, okay, the actors didn't get paid, their managers didn't get paid, their agents didn't get paid, their lawyers didn't get paid, maybe their makeup, hair, costume, stylists, then we get into the security guards that work on the lot. If they're not shooting anything, there's nothing for them to do. The catering.
It's very scary.
It's like I could go on and on and on. So I think entertainment, like, sure, it seems glitzy and glammy, but it's actually like a business. So when people say I don't want to sit in front of a computer all day, it's like, well, most of us sit in front of a computer all day.
Yeah.
Unless you're an actor, which, like, good luck with that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. It's like terrible.
At what point would you have given up? Like, the Instagram thing and the following. This is part of the reason I am almost wanting to get more into consulting for like small businesses and personal brands than the Instagram, because I was letting this like actually ruin me. I became a slave to this content, and the numbers are great. And then I'm not getting paid based on the fact that a video of me cold calling and getting rejected blows up. Like, it makes me feel empty. This makes me feel whole. Yeah. Right? Or, like, talking to a small business owner, whatever the fuck. But that shit makes me feel awful. Right. And people think, like, oh, you have $20,000 or you must be making a lot. And that's, yes, some months I make $20,000. But there are months where I've literally made nothing. Yeah. And I work so goddamn hard, but it's like, I can no longer compete with these kids on TikTok or Instagram. I don't know why. What you said earlier, like, why don't you have that following, right? It doesn't make any sense. You've done everything. You had 2 million on that other platform. Yeah.
It, like, literally doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And I don't think this is an industry or content creation or entertainment that wants to enable people who work really hard to do really well based on, like, the algorithm. They don't really care. It doesn't make any sense. So at what point did you ever think, and how did you get through those moments where, that frustration? Because it doesn't seem like you ever really gave up. Right? But you, in reality, should have, 100 million Instagram followers right now.
I don't know, but I don't. I think if I was being conservative and realistic, I think I should probably be around, like, 30 to 50,000.
Same. Yeah, I agree.
I think, like, that would make sense for the people I've been able to book on my shows who have had millions. Because that's the other thing, is the lie. Oh, if they post about you, it's a bunch of bullshit. It's like, I've had people with literally 10 million followers be like, she's great. You know what I mean? It's like, whatever. Like, I've been in the Kardashian loop. That loop, you should grow pretty quickly. It doesn't.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you mean like one of them tagging you, or?
Yeah, I was like one of them. Yeah, I was like in like a picture, and they were like tagged, whatever. So I did give up on acting. I stopped acting. That was way before social media, though. Like, Instagram wasn't even really. That's like very well documented on a bajillion podcasts of why I gave up acting. But I did give that up, and I just I was like, okay, I need to take care of myself. What am I going to do? So I didn't do anything. I didn't make any content. Podcasting wasn't a thing. I went and worked at MySpace. I fucking grinded. I had an idea for a show. I pitched it to everyone, and I was like, we can make money on this. We can have female advertising on here. It ended up working. We had a couple of other shows. Like, I started to figure out, like, how to take that passion of me having an interview, being on camera, using a lot of the comedy stuff that I like to do, and figuring out how to monetize it. So there have been moments, as I said previously, when I worked at certain jobs where I didn't feel comfortable kind of doing both, or I didn't have the resources to do both. I mean, the podcast cost me a ton of money. Mm-hmm. I don't shy away from talking about that. Like, you paid for the studio. Which
Only for you. I'm not even kidding. I had an interview this morning. We weren't in studio, and it's not that they weren't great people.
Oh my God, and I was late.
It's totally okay.
Well, only because unprecedented, the freeway melted.
No, but I will say, like, yes, that is the thing that I think about, because I don't make. I mean, I made like $2,100 off of like a one-off with a therapy.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, but that's like
a therapy company.
Yeah, but that's like a one. Those deals with the podcast are not as lucrative. I'll get smaller.
No, they're
deals.
not. They're not. And listen, I'm with you. I never do in studio. I went to New York 2 weeks ago for work, and I rented out a studio for the day, and it was a grip. Yeah. I mean, it cost me a ton.
But you had big guests.
Yeah, but I had big guests. I mean, they're all like my best friends. Yeah. But I was like, I want to do this, and I will say, I have been getting, and you're totally right, because I said to you, I was like, do you want to just do this on Zoom?
I was like, no, because I see.
Well, no, you're so sweet, but it is, people love the video.
Yeah, I know.
And the vibe is totally different.
Totally different, and it's great, but again, it's something that I think aspiring podcasters also need to figure in, is like, this just is, the podcasting especially, is not something that is an overnight thing. People are like diehard Liz Culley fans listening to your show, or they'll listen to mine every week, and that's great. But it's the effort is more than the money out of it.
Well, I'll tell you that. And my last podcast and I talked about that at that Soho House panel. That's a perfect example. We went like viral, multiple times. Page 6, Us Weekly, Bustle, Elite Daily, fucking Vox, like you name it. I mean, we were basically a press stop. I had a whole production company behind me. I also, as a salesperson, sold deals to Disney, to FX, to Amazon Prime. I made $0. Yeah. $0. After recuperable costs that needed to go back to the studio, I made absolutely no money. That being said, and I really appreciate you having me in here today, because it does cost money. Like, this is a whole thing. All this equipment, like our homie in the back, like producing, like this is a lot, And I think that, so there have been moments where I don't know if I gave up. I kind of gave up. I mean, and then I would just sort of figure out how to make it work within, my life. I had a shopping deal with Embassy Row for Getting Nailed, which was the show I started at MySpace, which I was able to acquire back, which was amazing, crazy, and it's because I was homies with the CEO, who was the last person to lay me off, and I went to them and I said, may I please have this? And they're like, well, we own it. And I was like, but can I have it? They gave it to me. I got into a shopping agreement with them. TNT bought the show. TNT merged, because welcome to entertainment, friends. And then Michael Davies, who was at that Soho House panel, who's a mentor of mine. He's now the executive producer of Jeopardy. He started a little show called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I mean, he's an amazing, and a huge podcaster. He has, Men in Blazers, which is like one of the biggest podcasts of all time. He was like, hey, the show, that sucks, but in the meantime, like, I work with Andy Cohen. You're very funny. We've been trying to figure out another show with his assistant. Would you be interested? It's a podcast, like, da-da-da-da-da. I was like, okay. I mean, I definitely have a face for radio, but, like, okay. And we did it, and it was huge, and it was great, and it went on for 2 years, and we went our separate ways, but that, for all intents and purposes, like, that was a really very successful podcast.
Yeah.
And I made not a single dollar. Not $1.
No.
Not a single dollar.
But the station page, because, like, when I was at Disney hosting my show, I got paid by Disney. So you weren't even on, like, payroll.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
I didn't make $1.
Interesting.
Not a single dollar.
Yeah. And with brand deals, though, like, I remember, the biggest thing is I remember at Disney, I thought, which I was really wrong about, I would be able to, like, go to Target and Kmart and be like, hey, it was, like, the entrepreneurial side. That's probably why maybe they hated me. I don't know if they hated me.
I don't think they hated you.
I
Also,
was
Radio Disney, that's, like, great.
Yeah, but then, then they closed down, right? And I actually had just left, and I remember I was talking to one of the other hosts there, and she'd worked there, like, 6 years. Like, this paid her, these people's bills. It never paid my bills. I could not.
Was it through Sirius?
No. Radio Disney was on Sirius, but it was like Disney. It was still the Disney brand. So I was at the Disney studio filming.
But you would be there, but then they syndicated through Sirius.
But then they also had the Radio Disney channel. And then within 12 days, I remember
Public radio.
Yeah, public radio. And then also on the car thing, which was I think Sirius.
No, that's Sirius.
Yeah. And then I had left, and they didn't even tell anyone, and it was on the news that Radio Disney was closing down. And then there was, like, an HR meeting, like, after it went on the news, and they literally said, like, we're closing down, you guys are all laid off. And this was, like, it never paid my bills because it's not enough money, But it was crazy to me that they could, like, do that. But it's interesting because you have the in front of the camera and the behind the camera experience with, like, what brands want, and also, like you said, how you sold that show to them. And I think that is the biggest advantage you can have, which most probably creators don't, is you've got the sales side. You know what sells, you know how to sell you.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's a hard line to be able to figure out, and
you
did it.
Thank you. It's weird, though. I mean, I would go into pitch meetings specifically for Getting Nailed, and Getting Nailed was just ahead of its time. I basically would sit down and I was getting insane nail art pretty early on before it became kind of a bigger thing, and I wanted to get my nails done with celebrities. And it was great. It was a logistical nightmare. It was a production nightmare. I was, like, calling people in Korea and, like, booking it was crazy. And it took forever because I would promise these celebrities, oh, I'm going to pay for your manicure. Well, it takes sometimes hours to get your nails done. So it was crazy. But I would be in the room as the talent pitching the show and myself, but then also pitching the potential ad revenue. It was weird. It didn't always work. But I don't trust anyone to sell it the way I'm going to sell it.
Because you know what sells.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really... I mean, listen, I did sell it at one... I almost sold it to Revolt TV, which is Diddy. And I refused to let Amber Rose host it. I said I'd rather have the show die.
Oh my god. Do you tell that to her face or to, like, the team?
No, it was like the team. They tested me and everything. They did testing. They, like, did a whole thing. I hosted the show, or the live show a couple of times. And then Diddy's team was like, okay, so we want to buy it, but we're thinking we need a bigger celeb, and we're thinking Amber Rose. And I was like, I'd rather it die. And there's not a fucking dollar amount. And it did. But, I mean, it's whatever. It's fine. Who knows? Maybe I'll do that show. I'd love to do that show again. It was really fun. It was a pain in the ass, but, I would rather it die. Mm-hmm. You also have to know that about yourself, too. Because I've come up with ideas and I don't care. That's kind of what I was saying. Like, I moved out of editorial because I would pitch things that I would want to do, and then I'd have to, like, give them up, or I wouldn't own them anymore, and that was heartbreaking. But now I'm pretty clear on, like, what I would do for other people and what I would do for myself.
Yeah, it's interesting. I read an interview of you, and you said something about, like, you didn't feel like you fit into the queer community. Or that was, like, the headline.
Really? Yeah. Where was that interview?
I really
No,
liked...
it's okay, fine. I'm not, like, I was like, did I say that? Yeah, I'm sure I said that.
But I'm curious, and with your podcast and whatnot, that journey for you and, like, dating, and now you're married. How do you... I can't even, like, literally find one guy to talk to for more than, like, 3 days. That,
well,
like,
okay.
Shit.
First of all, who did I just talk to about that? Oh, my friend Drew. He's the fucking best. Dating men in LA sucks.
Dating men sucks.
Ooh, I think LA blows. Yeah. I mean, I dated men and women here, so I feel like I had good grasp on it all. It's like not fun.
No.
It is tough. It is very just surface, I think. It's tough. And so I just wanted to say I'm sorry because it's hard.
This is why I went to Austin, but then I got my heart broken really bad twice there. So now I'm going to London because I'm just like all of this. And I like dating there. I need to be in a normal element of my life now. Like, I can no longer handle this just insane, like the go and the video, like all of it. You know what I mean? And then like also having to think about making money. It's like too much. And I like...
Wait, but what's in London? That's one of the most expensive cities in the world.
Well, I know. I'm realizing the rents there are more than I paid in any other city.
Crazy.
I have dual citizenship though, so I have my mom's British, so I'm just like, you know
go.
But I'm not like one of those nomadic, like I want to live in Mexico City for a month and then I need a bed to go back to. And I've always had a bed to go back to. That's my own place. But I just think there's a lot there in the sense of like consulting and branding and whatnot. But you know, that comment that you made in this interview, why? I mean, for anyone who's listening who may be queer, like struggling with their identity.
Yeah, I think, queer, well, it's so interesting. I felt like I wasn't really a part of like the queer community here in LA. When I first moved here, I was just kind of exploring that part of my life. I was coming from San Francisco, which I think people are like, oh, it's so gay there. I come from like the actual city. It's actually quite conservative and old school. I was like a debutante. I mean, it's not
wow!
like...
Oh
it's not... God. I know.
I saw that on Gossip Girl, and I always wanted to go to one of those balls.
I smoked a blunt and left.
Oh
and
my
all the girls
God.
did coke.
Yeah.
I was like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
I wasn't really dating a lot of women there. I had a boyfriend for a long time. I would like kind of, but not really. But it felt just very, I don't know. I just didn't really have like a group of queer female friends. Then I moved to LA, and that group was like partying a ton. I'm sure you've seen this in LA. It's like, these people, I don't know. Like, I don't know how you make your money. I guess your parents pay your bills. You're like partying all the time. I had a million jobs.
I know.
And I don't know. I didn't feel that a part of that community. I put my head down. I worked really, really hard. I mean, really hard. I didn't even have much of a social life. Luckily for me, a lot of my social life has been work, which tends to be a lot of movie premieres, concerts, like fun shit that I like. And then I just, like lesbian culture, queer culture, I just didn't feel like I fit in. I would go and they'd be like, who is this like kind of like random mom from Brentwood or something? You know what I mean? They're like, who is this like bougie bitch? And I'm like, I don't know. I just never really found my footing. But now that I've gotten older, like I just, in the last 6 months, joined the board of LPAC, which is the only political pact here in America that puts queer identifying women and non-binary folks into office. Oh, and I'm surrounded by ballers. Mm-hmm. Like, these women on the board, I mean, our president of the board is a queer woman who owns the motherfucking Cubs.
Oh, wow.
Like, huh? I mean, I'm around political consultants. I'm around Olympians. Really, really interesting women, queer women that I'm getting to know that are older than me. And so I'm sort of finding my lane in that sense in terms of my queerness. But now that I've like sat with being queer, I'm married, I like live in the burbs. I do not feel straight. Mm-hmm. I will tell you that much. Still very attracted to men. I mean, I have a beautiful wife, but yeah, so that's been interesting. And also gay content, queer content is so specific. I was kind of sick of, my last show was called Scissoring Isn't a Thing. Mm-hmm. Yes, I fucking helped come up with that name, which was moronic, because from an advertising perspective, you think I would have been smart to not name my podcast that, but whatever. It was a funny name. It was always like, it just felt very pigeonholed in like who the guest could be. I would get these emails back from publicists like, well, I would love to have so-and-so on your show, but they're not queer. And I'm like, who cares? I want to talk to them anyway.
I do think I'm very good at manipulating, but in the right way. I don't think manipulation is used usually in a good light.
Sure.
But I think there is an element of like, you want someone to buy into what you're believing, right? You have to fake it till you make it. Sometimes you have to manipulate a little bit to kind of, move the story so it's right in your direction so they see it. Because you're right. If I'm even on the phone trying to pitch a brand deal, and they're like, X amount of followers, then you kind of have to be like, yeah, but I bet you worked with so-and-so and they had this many, and what was the results? And all of a sudden now like a little bit of manipulation, and it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because there's an element of confidence in that, but you can't also be an asshole.
Yeah, I was a moron.
Yeah.
Like, I cringe thinking about that at 100%. So that is one. Well, yeah, I'm not perfect.
But I'm glad you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, me too. It's like the perfect job for me right now. It's the I don't want to go anywhere. I think, like I said at the beginning of this, I think all of the different, experiences that I've had, failures that I've had, successes that I've had, interviews, etc., have gotten me to the moment and where I am now. I don't think I would have been resilient enough or creative enough to navigate a double strike.
Yeah.
I don't think I would be understanding how to, figure out a legacy publishing brand when, people are very focused on the environment and not printing paper. But we still want magazine. I mean, I love a magazine. So I think it's hard. There are challenges, but I think everything kind of led me to this point. So.
Well, Liz, thank you so much for
thank
coming
you.
on today. Where can everyone find you on social media? Follow you, listen to the show.
At Listen to Liz and at coolcoolcool.